Welcome to Shir haShirim class number 40. Isn't that exciting that we reached 40 sessions in this series? On that note, go ahead and mute your microphones if you are just standing by in the Zoom. You'll unmute when you want to ask a question, answer a question, make a comment. And any announcements? I think I did announce last time when I was waiting for people to come on. We only had Cliff last week join. But I made a comment that I have to give a lot of gratitude to the Seattle Kollel, which let's say it was underwriting this hour for the duration of time that I was doing it there. And they generously agreed to continue that support. So with gratitude to the Seattle Kollel, I just want to make mention of that. So anyone who gets benefit from this class should feel that if they want an address to send any contributions, then the Seattle Kollel is a great address for that, and seattlekollel.com. So just want to put that out there. My gratitude and whatever motivation that gives anyone to support the Seattle Kollel, even though I'm in Houston. So with that, let's get a jump on the text. We were in the middle of Shir haShirim chapter 5. Not even in the middle. We were really at the end, because the last bunch of verses we did are the end of the chapter. All we were taking our time with was kind of unwrapping them, because they're very deep, these last bunch of verses. The context being that the nations of the world ask Israel, what is so special about your God that your love for him is so intense, unlike any other love that exists in the world, even our own love for any of our own deities? And she answers them with this very descriptive, beautiful description of all the beautiful physical qualities of this man that she loves. And all of it is representative of different features, attributes of our relationship with Hashem. And we started going through those. So let me share my screen and we'll do a quick synopsis of last time and we'll go to the new stuff. Okay, screen share. What do we got here? Chrome. Google Chrome. Open Google Chrome. Okay. Can you see Google Chrome?
Yes.
Okay, I'm zooming in a bit on the text, so it's a little more visible. Does it look clear? Okay. So last time we unraveled verse number 10. Her first description of her love is, she says, Dodi tzach ve'adom. My beloved is white and red. Dagul me rivava, flagged with myriads. And we said the whiteness of God represents God's mercy, and the redness of God represents his retribution. And why the retribution is a praise is because the way we learned it, and it was the material we went through last week was very, very beautiful. And if you haven't reviewed that class, I recommend you do, because I'm not giving enough, service to it. I'm giving it short shrift right now. But we said the mercy is his mercy upon Israel and his
Just froze. Rabbi Moffat, if you can hear me, I cannot hear you. The voice froze and the picture froze.
I think he dropped. He's going to probably dial back in.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm using my wife's newfangled computer.
Froze again, Rabbi.
On the continuation, it's telling me my connection is unstable. Does that mean you can't hear me again?
For a couple, about a half a minute.
Okay, I'll keep going. If something's not clear, just say, could you explain that again? We missed it. Anyway, the idea of the retribution against Edom, specifically this entity that is related to Rome, has to do really with, we'll just say, the present exile, which was brought about by Rome, in which we find ourselves. This is still what we would call the Roman exile. So those who persecute us throughout this exile will more or less be characterized as Edom in prophecy. Even to a certain degree, Yishmael is seen as kind of a partner with Edom in this period of exile. So I have to share the screen again, but that was Tzach va'odom, white and red. That is white in his mercy to Israel, red in his retribution against the wicked of the nations. Now, let's see. Okay, and Dagul Meravava we did not cover last time. We only did white and red, but it's fairly simple. Rashi just says Dagul Meravava, flagged by myriads. I'll read it to you in Rashi, his words, but we'll I think easily understand his meaning, which we were right over here. Dagul Meravava, it's very quick. He says, Harbe chayalos makifan oso. There are many forces of soldiers, if you will, that surround God. Now, last time we talked about anthropomorphism and the idea of the physical descriptions of God are not literal. We spent some time on that. So we're surrounding God. What does that mean? So I think I would most easily understand this the way that I have seen it in many contexts, and I brought it up, I think, over the course of the class, is that the angels of God are seen as his host, his army. And we find in many places in Tanakh that when the Jews go to war, there's sort of like an angelic force that is fighting for them. And I think that's all that's meant over here when it talks about he's flagged by myriads, meaning he's surrounded by myriads upon myriads of his angelic ministers. And I think that's very simple. Okay, now we would move on to the next verse, which is verse 11. Any questions before we go to the new verse? Okay, here we go. Oh, it says like this. Rosho kesem paz kivutso sav tal talim shechoros ka'orev, which means this. Rosho kesem paz is a beautiful, shining treasure like fine gold. Paz is fine gold. And we defined when we went through it, the kesem, related to the word katom, which means orange in Hebrew or in modern Hebrew. A kesem in modern Hebrew, ketem, means a stain, because you imagine like you drop your pizza and you get like an orange stain on your clothing. So ketem from the word katom, orange, means a stain. But here it doesn't mean a stain. Rashi says a ketem here means some type of like royal treasure, like a jewel of some sort that shines with this beautiful golden color, a golden aura. And his head is like a shining golden treasure. Kivutzos of taltalim. We said the kivutzos are the clusters of hair, the locks of hair that he has that are taltalim, from the word tole in Hebrew, meaning to hang down. His locks of hair hang down. This is a description of his beautiful hair. And they are shechoros ka'orev. They're black like a raven. So God has flowing black locks of hair that flow down from his beautiful head that shines like a like a beautiful golden treasure. Okay, so that's the physical description. And now Rashi will break down for us the allegory.
Screen froze.
I'm back. Sorry. You can hear me now, right? I'm sorry. I have a feeling that it's just gonna be intermittent that way. I don't have a control over it. So thank you for being patient, and we'll try to continue. I was talking about the rosh, the head, which Rashi says is the kesem paz, is the golden treasure, right? That's where we were. Stop me if I'm going ahead and I lost you anywhere. So Rashi said that the rosh was the beginning of his words. Rosh in Hebrew means the beginning as well as the head. The beginning of his words shone like this beautiful treasure. That's where I got cut off, I think. So it says, V'cheinu Omer, and so too it says in the Psalms. This is in Psalm 119, verse 130. It's the longest chapter, I think, in the entire Tanakh. Has 170 something verses. And if you ever look at Psalm 119, it's a very fascinating psalm. It goes in alphabetical order. The first 8 verses start with the letter Aleph. The next 8 verses start with the letter Bet. The next 8 verses start with the letter Gimel, and so on. It goes through the alphabet, 8 verses for each letter, where King David basically spends the entire psalm praising the Torah. If you look through there, it's the longest psalm, and it takes the whole alphabet 8 times over, praising the Torah. It's absolutely beautiful and thrilling and exhilarating. So in that chapter, in the verses that begin with the letter Pei, one of them says, Pesach divarecha yo'ir. Pesach, like petach, like the opening of your words, yo'ir, enlightens, it gives light, like or. Pesach divarecha yo'ir, the opening of your words gives light. So that's exactly what's being described in Shir haShirim, according to Rashi. Rosho, his head, is the Pesach divarecha. It's the opening words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the beginning of his speech. And it gives light, it's shining, it's sparkling like this beautiful jewel. Pasach, here is how God opened in his speaking to us. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God. I do that very dramatically because when I teach my students, I teach first and second grade. When I teach my students the Seres HaDibros, I do with a lot of drama. So I'm just mimicking myself a little bit right now. He opened up by saying, I am Hashem, your God, which we encountered these words last week. If you watched last week's class, we encountered these words when we were examining the idea of that God is white, right? And Rashi described God, we saw as a kind old man, a gentle old man, whatever, at Sinai, giving the Torah. And we talked about the anthropomorphism there and how the Midrashim say that God revealed himself in different forms at different events in Jewish history, so that at the sea, he was like a warrior, and at Sinai, he was like this old sage, etc. And of course, we explained that it's all metaphoric, but Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the Medrash says, why does God say, I am Hashem Elokecha? To tell you, just like sometimes you're going to see me reveal myself as Hashem with the attribute of mercy, and I appear as a merciful old man, as it were. And then sometimes Elokecha, I reveal myself through the attribute of strict justice and retribution, and I appear more harsh and strict like a warrior. You should know it's Anochi. It's me. They're both me. It's not two separate gods. It's me. I'm the God who presided over the Egyptian slavery, as tough as that was. And I'm the God who presided over the redemption from slavery. These two are not two separate beings. Anochi, Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, the God of mercy. I am Elokecha, the God of judgment. So he says he opened his words with these words. And now Rashi says something very, very beautiful. Heram Techila. First, he showed them shemishpat melucha yeshlo aleihem, that he has the power of kingship, if you will, over them. Mishpat melucha, the sentence of kingship, the law of kingship, however you want to interpret that phrase. Mishpat melucha, he has over them. He has the status of kingship over them. He started with that. But achar kach, and after that, Gazar aleihem gzeiroisav. Then he made decrees over them. He revealed his laws over them. First, he let him know that. So it seems as though Rashi is saying, Rosho kesem paz. The beginning of his words were kesem paz. Now, just to bring you back to when Rashi described the kesem paz earlier in its literal form, he says, kesem hu lashon segulas melachim. The kesem is like a crown. It's like a jewel of a king. Segula could mean a jewel, a treasure of a king. It's like a king's jewel, like a crown jewel, if you will. It's a type of a treasure that the king would keep in his treasure house. So by identifying it, the kesem here as a king's treasure, so he set us up for the fact that his first words were the revelation of this kingly appearance, so that Anochi Hashem Elokecha was God introducing himself as I am your king. And then after he introduced himself as king, he was able to say, okay, now that we've been introduced and now that you are aware that I'm your king, I can now instruct you according to my laws. And then he started giving them laws. That's what it sounds like. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm your king. And now, lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim, there shall not be other gods for you. We have the delineation of the laws. But I have another way of understanding this, and I just before I present it, I want to just ask if there's any questions or remarks anyone wants to make at this point. No, nothing. Let's see. Anybody on YouTube have a question? It's a little delayed on YouTube. You can see here's the YouTube chat. I have it paused so I don't hear myself talking. But there's somebody there. Anyway, if you put your question in the chat, I'll try to check back in there if you hear me on YouTube. Fine. So here's what I see. I see Anochi Hashem Elokecha, like I just told you before, and the reason I gave you that prelude was because this information was largely discussed in last week's class. I am Hashem. I'm the God of mercy. Elokecha. I'm also the God of judgment. So here, there's this idea of like mishpat melucha, so to speak, the judgment of the king, and then gazar gzeiroisav, him giving out his decrees, right? So to me, where's the mercy part over here? If he says Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I see the laws part, but where's the mercy part? So the way I was looking at it in my prep, and you could take it or leave it, is possibly, I'm not convinced of this, but these two statements are Anochi Hashem Elokecha, meaning the Mishpat Melucha, I am your king. That's Anochi Hashem. I am Hashem. And the name Hashem, the Yud name of Hashem, represents God's kingship. And this Ve'achar Kach Gazar Aleim Gzeirosav, that's the Elokecha part. That both of these are in the statement of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your king, and I'm going to make laws over you. Because the reason I feel that I want to read it this way is what we spoke about in the beginning of this series, Shir haShirim, back in class number 2. And we spoke about also in class number 3 of the prayer series, is that Hashem is our king as loving king, not as despotic king. I don't want to spend too much time on this concept because it's a rehash, but I want to summarize it. That we could have two possible ideas of king. There's the idea of king that I have all the power and you must serve me, and it's all about me and what you can do for me. Or there's the concept of king of I have all the power and I have all the means and you are underneath my care, and I want to know how I can serve you. I want to know how I can use my position to benefit you. I'm looking to my servants, to my constituents, if you will, and I'm trying to serve you. The king is the servant of the people rather than the people being the servant of the king. If you remember, I think in one of those classes, I talked about the book. What was the name of the book? The name of the book was Escape from India, where the guy's in Indian prison and he meets this Nigerian named Joe. And Joe, the Nigerian, sits all day like an Indian position on the floor, and he plays chess with everybody in the jail one by one. And so when he came to play chess with Joe, Joe gave him this chess lesson. He said, what is the purpose of the game? And the fellow who's telling the story, he's writing the book, he says, the purpose is to protect the king. Protect the king. And Joe says, no, you're wrong. He says, you're the king and the pieces are your subjects, and your job as the king is to protect your subjects. Very interesting. Now, does a chess player really feel that way? I don't play chess really, so I don't know. But this was an interesting idea. It was like a paradigm shift in the book. And Judaism approaches Hashem this way. And that's the story I always tell about Onkelos, that when he's debating with the Roman soldiers, whose king is greater, the Roman emperor or God, he always makes this comparison where he says, we have a mezuzah on the door. The Roman emperor makes you stand outside his door and guard him, but God stands outside our door and guards us, right? When you're traveling, the general makes the lower ranking officer hold the torch for him along the journey. He says, but our God holds the torch for us. That's why we had in the desert that God made the pillar of fire to lead us in the desert. So he keeps drawing this contrast of like, you serve a king that's out for himself. He's just trying to get what he can get from you. But we, as the Jewish people, we serve a king who's always trying to do for us. So, he persuades them to convert to Judaism. So this is what I see as when we say Anochi Hashem, and Hashem is God of mercy, and that is synonymous with I am your king, because I am the king who is the merciful king. I'm the king who's going to take care of you and provide for you and protect you, not the other way around. So then with that paradigm, so then we can go on to Elokecha, the God of justice, as it were, because now I'm willing to accept the laws of this God because I understand they're for my benefit. So once I introduce myself as Hashem, then I can introduce myself as Elokecha, and that's why it's in that order. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. First, he showed them his kingship, which is a kingship of mercy. Then he decreed laws upon them, because we understand that the source of those laws are mercy. And that's why we said back in last week's class that all of that is included within God's whiteness, the white being representative of mercy. Is even, and God says, I am one, Anochi, it's both me. Even the so-called strict justice is really an outgrowth. It's a product of my attribute of mercy. So that's a second way I want to read it. Rather than saying again that Anochi Hashem Elokecha is I am your king, and then all the commandments that follow is just the decrees. And so Rashi says the opening of his words was the introduction, and then everything else that he spoke about after that were the laws. It's possible that Rashi means to say this entire phrase, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, includes all this that Rashi's saying. I am your merciful king. I am the one who decrees the laws. They are laws of mercy. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Just two ways of reading Rashi. Fine. Some of my thoughts and my preparation, I shared them. Any thoughts from you? Let's peek at Yuto. I think I saw Yaakov get his hand up. He says I'm following. Okay, great. No questions yet. Okay. Keep them coming whenever they're ready to go. Yaakov, what are you going to tell us? Unmute your mic, please.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. The whole idea of using white. I'm not going to get into a racial thing here.
No, let's not be political. This is
no.
Nothing to do with.
But rather,
nothing to do with
I think about white in terms of light, and white encompasses all color.
I like that. I think the place for comments about the color white, we'll see how far we get tonight. White comes up again, but definitely would fit in context in last week's class. I'm not going to revisit that subject, but for suffice it to say, we said white represents mercy and has nothing to do with skin color.
No, but
Rashi says, Dodi tzach va'odo, my beloved is white and red, as a physical description, and means that he has a light complexion, and therefore I can see the contrast of his red cheeks against his skin. But I think he was more, as far as a description of beauty, I don't think he was saying light complexion as opposed to that somehow dark skin is unattractive, but sort of he was complimenting the contrast of white on red, that when you have light skin and you get blushy cheeks, that you see a colorful palette, and that the writer is writing that's a pleasant feature, but we're not to the exclusion of anyone else's skin color. So it's not a race thing.
That's exactly where I was heading. The whole notion of white being all encompassing means that Hashem rules over all.
Okay, I accept that. So, okay, next, we have the clusters of hair. The locks of hair are taltalim, are hanging. So here's something very beautiful. I have to watch the time because here I want to go into a little bit of deeper stuff. But he says the locks of hair are hanging down. Means what? I'll call coats v'coats. Tilim shel halachos. So what is Rashi doing? He's taking the word kivutzosav, which means the locks of hair, and he's relating it to the Hebrew word coats, which means a point. Okay, a coats is a point. Could also mean a thorn, but essentially a coats means a point. Like the word kates means an edge or an end of something. So a coats is like the point of a thing. And taltalim, the hanging hair, he relates to the word tilim, or singular would be tail in Hebrew. A tail is a mound. Okay, so the kvutsos of hair are points, and the taltalim of hair are mounds, points and mounds. Okay, locks of hair hanging, kvutsos of taltalim are kotsim and tilim, points and mounds. What does he say about this? Al kol koitz v'koitz, upon every single little point, tile tilim shal halachos, there are mounds upon mounds of laws. And what this is a phrase lifted straight out of the literature of the sages, that every little jot, every jot and tittle, as it were, of the Torah can be expounded upon, to be drawn out from every jot and tittle of the Torah, mounds upon mounds of information, of wisdom, so that it looks like something insignificant, but nothing in Torah is insignificant. And even the smallest dot is teaching a near infinite, or perhaps infinite, amount of wisdom if we were to have access to it. Kvutzos of taltalim, al kol koitz v'koitz tilim shalalachas. On every single point are mounds upon mounds. So I want to show you some of the applications where this phrase appears in the literature of the sages, because I find it very interesting, exciting, meaningful. So I want to go look at some of that. If you have a remark to make, you can do so now. But I'm going to scroll down to a yellow section that I prepared below. Zoom, 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 zoom. This is all from last time. Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Stop me at any time. I'm going to keep going. In the Gemara in Eruvin, Tav Chaf Aleph Amad Beis, that's 21b. They expound this verse. Kvutzos of taltalim, his locks of hair are hanging. Amar of Chista, Amar Mar Ukva, Rav Chista said, in the name of Mar Ukva, Melamed sheyesh lidrosh. This is the fuller statement that Rashi is abbreviating. Melamed, this teaches sheyesh lidrosh, that we should expound al kol koitz v'koitz, on every single jot and tittle. Tile tilim shel halachos, mounds upon mounds of halachos, laws. Shechoros ka'orev, they're black as a raven. Did we saw that? That's also here, isn't it? Did I skip that? I almost don't remember saying it. Where we have yeah, shechoros ka'orev. That's the end of the verse. His head is this jewel, locks of hair hanging down, black as a raven. Yeah, we said that. His hair is black as a raven. So in this Gemara, they expound on the rest of the verse, that his hair is black like a raven. Among whom will you find this wisdom, the mounds upon mounds of wisdom that can be expounded from these little points in the Torah? Who's able to do this? It can be found in those who go early. Mashkim in Hebrew means to go early. They go early, uma'ariv. And they go and they stay late, like Erev, evening. They go early in the morning and they stay late in the evening in the base medrash. These people who spend their days in the base medrash from early in the morning to late at night, those are the ones who are going to discover the mounds upon mounds of divine wisdom that is to be drawn out, that is to be expounded from every little point in the Torah. Rabba Amar. Now I'll explain what that has to do with black like a raven, if you haven't figured it out already. Rabba Amar, Rabba says, well, before I get to Rabba Amar, let's just do Shchoros Ka'orev. So here, I think it's Mashkim Umariv. Yeah, Rashi says Mashkim Umariv. Those who go early, those who go late. Shchoros, lashon shachris. When it says that his hair is black, shachor, his hair is black, shachor. That's related to the word shacharis. You'll see as the same root. Shachar is the same root as shachor, black. The morning prayer, the shacharis, is called the black prayer, because the time of prayer begins when it's still dark out. The darkness of night, the blackness of night is still in the sky. So shacharis is like the early morning, as it were. Shchoros, the hair, these hanging curls, which we said are the mounds upon mounds of wisdom drawn out from the dots. Where are they? They're in the shchoros ka'orev, those who go to the Beis HaMedrash chakras early in the morning. And orev, says Rashi, lashon arvis, orev, like the word erev, evening. And those who stay late in the evening. Shachor, black, chakras, early in the morning. Orev, like erev, evening. Those who stay late in the evening. Those who spend long days in the Beis HaMedrash, in the study hall, from early in the morning to late at night, they're the ones who are going to gather and cull these mounds upon mounds of halachos, as it were, from every single jot and tittle of the Torah. Beautiful? I find that very beautiful. Any thoughts on this? Okay, so hang in there. I'm going to take it a little bit further. Here's a beautiful Gemara Menachos that I'm only quoting part of it. It's longer, but because what's longer about it will take us too far afield, as fascinating as it is, it really deserves treatment a different time. So it says like this in the Gemara Menachos, Chavtas Amud Beis 29b. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, B'sha'a she'ala Moshe la'moroim, when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven, as it were, to bring down the Torah, Mitzai lahakadosh baruch hu, he found the Kadosh Baruch Hu, okay, euphemistic language. He found the Holy One, blessed is He. She yoshev, that he was sitting, v'kosher ksarim la'oisiyos, and he was tying crowns onto the letters. Now, hopefully tonight, we'll see how much time we have. We'll see more of this. But he saw God tying crowns onto the letters. Tying crowns onto what letters? What I mean to say is that later on, when we get to, maybe it's the next verse that talks about, no, I'm sorry, Rashi's going to tell us in Shchoros Ka'orev, I think in this verse, the black like a raven, not what the Gemara said. Not what the Gemara said. I don't think Rashi says what the Gemara said. Rashi says something different about black as a raven. He says, it's so hard to find it. It's such a big Rashi. Shchoros Ka'orev, yeah. They're called black like a raven. Why? Al Shem Shahaisa Kesuva Lefanav Eish Chera Al Gabi Eish Levana. Because the words of the Torah were written Lefanav, before him, meaning before God. The words of the Torah were written before God, Eish Shechora, as black fire, Al Gabi Eish Levana, on a backdrop of white fire. And this is an idea that I want to have time to explore. I have some sources on it, that you may be familiar with the idea that before Hashem created the world, He created the Torah. The Torah was created as a blueprint for the world, as it were. Like any architect doesn't do the groundbreaking, he doesn't do the building until he has a plan. Hashem had a plan. You could call Hashem's plan, if you want, the Torah. And there was this primordial Torah that Hashem wrote, quote unquote, in some spiritual sense. He created a spiritual document. And the spiritual document would become the blueprint through which the world would come into being. And how is the spiritual document written in euphemistic language? It was formed by letters of fire. And the letters of fire were black, and the parchment was a white fire. Upon a parchment of white fire, God inscribed letters of black fire. Very mystical, mysterious idea, which Rashi says over here. So now, if we have time, we'll go into that more. But now we have that Rashi tells us, the Gemara Menachos tells us that when Moshe went up to heaven to bring the Torah down, he found the Kadosh Baruch Hu was tying crowns onto the letters. So there were letters up there. It's just tying crowns onto them, right? Where's the Gemara here? Whatever this means. It's very pictorial language. Amar Lefanav, Moshe said to Hashem, Ribono shel Olam, Master of the universe, Mi ma'akev al yadcha. Literally, that means who's holding you back. But what it means to say is, for what reason are you putting these? What's the purpose? What's the need? What need do you have to put crowns on top of the letters? The letters aren't enough. The letters aren't instructive enough. I'll copy down the Torah word for word, and I'll bring down what's going to do these little forgot what I would call them in calligraphy. Some things, not serifs, but something, whatever. But these little points that you're making on top of the letters, right? And if you look in a Torah scroll, and I didn't put a picture in the file, you look in a Torah scroll at the way the letters are written, many of them have these, what we call crowns, tagin, crowns on top of them that are kind of these little lines coming up with dots on top, right? These little points coming up out of the letters on the top, and they're called crowns. So apparently Moshe sees God putting crowns on the letters, at the last minute. Moshe, don't start copying it. I'm not done. Boop, 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 boop. He's putting the crowns on. Just wait a second. And Moshe's like, what is forcing you to do this? Why do you have to put crowns on? What purpose does it serve? What need is there for this? Amarlai, listen to this. He says to him, Adam echad yesh. There is one man. She'asid liyos b'soif kama doros. He's going to exist in a number of generations from now. V'Akiva ben Yosef Shemo. His name is Akiva, son of Joseph. This is the famous Rabbi Akiva, by the way, in case you don't know. There's going to be this fellow, Akiva ben Yosef. She'asid lidrosh al kol koitz v'koitz tilin shel halachais. He's going to darshan, he's going to expound on every single one of these points, mounds upon mounds of laws. Amar Lafanav, and Ramosha says to him, Ribono shel Olam, Master of the universe, Harehuli, show me this man. Amar Lai, Hashem says to him, Chazor la'acherecha, go backwards. Chazor la'acherecha, it's very clear what it means. Return behind you. Does it mean maybe it means like turn around? You want to see him? Turn around. So Moshe turns around, or he takes a few steps backwards. It's not clear what this motion is. Chazor la'acherecha, go behind you. Look behind you. Holach, Moshe went, v'yoshav b'soif Shemoneh shuros, and he sat behind 8 rows. Now, obviously, the Gemara here is truncating information, but it's almost set up like a movie. Like as Moshe is sort of taking these steps back, he's finding himself drawn into another place, and he's in a base medrash full of rows of seats and students, and there's a Rebbe in the front, and Hashem says, take a few steps back, and he walks 8 rows back, and he's behind the 8th row over here. So he's in the back row of the base medrash, and he's listening to the discussion that's happening in Rabbi Akiva's base medrash. The Rebbe is teaching, the students are asking the debate and the argumentation. It's going back and forth, question, answer, shakal, tarya, proof, rejection of the proof, like a base medrash. And Moshe's listening to what they're saying, and he has no clue. He doesn't know what they're talking about. What are they saying? What does all this mean? Tashash koichai. He lost his strength. He became despondent. What? I'm Moshe Rabbeinu, and this guy, this Rebbe, is going to live generations from now, and he's going to teach Torah on such a level that I can't grasp what's going on in his base medrash. Kevan shehigia ledavar echad. When Rabbi Akiva reached a certain thing he was teaching, Amru Lai Talmidav, his students said to him, Rebbe, teach. Rebbe, minayin lecha, how do you know this? They're asking questions. He's giving answers. They're like, how do you know all this? Where did you get all this information? Amar lahen, he said to them, halacha leMoshe mi Sinai. This halacha was taught to Moshe from Sinai. Nisyash v'daita. When Moshe heard that, he goes, oh, okay. And the Mefarshim explain, Moshe said, oh, I guess I didn't learn it yet because I just got here. I just got here. I got to spend 40 days of, like, I'm going to learn it. Okay. He's telling me the future. Like, we're going to know all this from Moshe. That's one understanding. Another understanding is that even though Moshe himself would not know, if you could say such a thing, all the halachas that Rebbi Akiva would derive from the Torah, ultimately because the source is Torah's Moshe, and it was just something that Rebbi Akiva was able to derive from these points that Moshe copies down from this primordial Torah, where Hashem tied on the crowns in the language of the Gemara. It's all from Moshe, even the things that are revealed later. So I'll read to you this excerpt from the Maharsha. The Maharsha was one of the great commentators on the Gemara, and he had actually two commentaries on the Gemara. One is called Chidushe Halachos, novel teachings regarding the law, and then Chidushe Agados, novel teachings regarding the Agadata, the, if you will, the homiletic or story portions of the Gemara. So this comment is actually in the Gemara I said to you before, the one in Eruvin, where they just darshan, where they expound the verse in Shir haShirim, Kvutzos of Taltalim. This is called Koitz for Koitz, every single dot. We're going to get Tilim, many, many mounds of halachas. Shcharis Ka'orev, it's black like a raven. Someone who gets up early in the morning, stays late at night. Fine. That on that Gemara, when it talks about on each and every point, we could draw out mounds upon mounds of halachas. The Maharsha says this: V'hahalachos shenischadju b'chol dor v'dor, and the halachas that are, if you will, made new in each and every generation, kvar nemru misinai biremiza. They were already taught. They were already said, literally said. They were already said at Sinai biremiza, in a hinted fashion. They weren't explicitly taught, but they were taught in a hinted fashion. They were alluded to, if you will, bakoitzois shel ha'oisios, by the points of the letters. Now, in the context that I showed you before, that would seem to mean based on the crowns on the letters, but it could even mean the shapes of the letters, the lines of the letters, the particular way the letter is written, in addition to these points. But if we have time, we'll get into that. If not, not. But you can understand it how you want to understand it. Ella, rather, she'ein kol ha'adam yuchal lamoid alehem. Literally means not every person can stand upon them. That means not every person is suited to understand all the information that's hinted in these very subtle allusions. It takes a particular mind in a particular generation to discover it, right? So it doesn't come out all at once. It comes out over the generations. And then it says, Ela b'miyata moitzan. So who's the one who's going to find this information? The guys who sit all day in the base medrash in each generation are going to reveal more and more. It's almost like the idea of progressive revelation, but it's not really progressive, because the idea is not that we're being revealed something that wasn't revealed before. It was all revealed, but it was couched in symbolism or allusion, or just, that we weren't smart enough to figure out all the meanings yet, until we looked and eventually we found. But it was all there. It was all there. So that is one understanding of here at the end, where Moshe says, I don't understand. And Rebbi Akiva says, Halacha l'Moshe mi Sinai. All this we know from Moshe, from Har Sinai. So again, one understanding is Moshe says, oh, I guess I'm going to learn it. I didn't learn it yet. I'm still young. Or even though Moshe himself never discovered it or never revealed it, it was later generations that found the things that Moshe had written that were alluded to and hidden in the text all along. Now here, we get to Shcheres Ka'arev, black like a raven. Before I continue or not continue, because it's about 9 o'clock, I'll just pause there. I said a lot. If anyone has any comments or questions. And I get to take a sip of water. Okay. Nothing. What about on YouTube? What do you say? Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you. You're beautiful too. Mwah. Then we have Shchoirois Ka'oirev, black like a raven, which we said, oh, somebody's coming in now. Oh, Nebuch. The class is over. He must have mixed up the times. I don't even know how to let the person in. I don't know. I think he left already. I don't see the person anymore. Came in, went out. Anyway, so black like a raven, we saw what the Gemara said. People who get up shachar, black, morning, raven, orev, erev, evening. The people who learn from morning to evening are the ones who reveal the tile halachas, the mounds and mounds of halachas from the kol koitz v'koitz, every single point. Rashi said something different. He said that the Torah is called, or these points are called shchoirais, black, because they're written black fire on white fire. There's quite a bit of source material that I wanted to examine on that, so I think I'll have to wait because we're at 9 o'clock, and I don't want to start. If I had started and we were just stretching it a little overtime to finish, that'd be one thing. But I don't want to start something already at the time, so we'll pause here. Tonight we learned about the head, the sparkling head, which is the first words, the beginning, the start of God's speech to the Jews at Har Sinai. I am the Lord your God. And the hair that was hanging, kvutzos of taltalim, are the koitzim, the many points, and the tile halachas that come out of it. And that's part of the beauty that Israel describes here. My God is so beautiful because he gives us a Torah that's so full of wisdom that we could look and we could look and we could look for generations and generations, and we'll always find more and more and more wisdom and more and more and more. So that's God's beauty. Okay, we'll pause it here. Any questions, comments before we call it a night?
I'm going to sign off, but thank you, Rabbi, and I'll see everybody next week.
Okay, thank you so much for coming. Have a good night, Cliff.
Good night.
Okay, good night, Yaakov. Good night, Yitzchak.
I just have one comment to make.
Please.
And that is how I'm constantly amazed every class at how much we can get out of one pasuk.
Right? Right. Baruch Hashem.
It blows my mind.
It's the beauty of the Torah. It really is. I mean, we might have demonstrated tonight this concept that for every little point in Torah, there's mounds upon mounds that could be said. And the truth is that I'm giving you just the tip of the iceberg, because I spend all day sifting through a lot of material and just choosing what's most relevant and what I feel honestly is most necessary to bring out the point, no pun intended, to bring out the point of what I think the verse is conveying according to Rashi. So, there's so much more that I didn't say, and yet there's so much that I don't even know myself, obviously. But I hope that what I do choose to focus on during the class is the feeling is that it's worthwhile, because I feel that way. So I hope that is felt also by the student. All right, Rabbi Yaakov, thank you. Have a great night. Rabbi Yitzchak, you as well.
You too, Rabbi. You take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Kol tov.
Kol tov. And Curtis on YouTube. Have a great night. See you next time.